Here's a long, detailed, and emotional story crafted for your title. HOA sent cops after my teenage son, didn't know Navy SEALs were visiting him. Entitled people. The knock on my door that morning wasn't polite. It was sharp, heavy, and urgent, the kind that makes your gut twist before you even open it. When I did, 2 uniformed officers stood on my porch, hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning the yard like they were about to raid the place. "Sir," one of them said sternly, "we've had several complaints from your HOA about disturbances, dangerous visitors, and possible illegal training happening at this residence. Where's your son?" My stomach sank. Jason, my 17-year-old, wasn't a troublemaker. He was quiet, disciplined, still trying to heal after losing his uncle, a Navy SEAL who'd been killed overseas. Jason didn't party. He didn't pick fights. What he did was spend his time learning from the men who had once served alongside his uncle, Navy SEALs who had taken it upon themselves to mentor him. But to the HOA? They were dangerous outsiders. To them, Jason was just another teenager they could paint as a problem to tighten their grip on the neighborhood. How it started. It all began 2 days earlier. My son had been outside in the driveway with Marcus, one of his uncle's old SEAL buddies. They were unloading gear from his truck, weight vests, training dummies, and ropes. Just simple tools to keep Jason in shape and build his discipline. But Karen, our self-proclaimed HOA queen, saw it differently. She came storming across the street, clipboard in hand, voice already raised. "What is this?" she shouted, pointing at the ropes like they were contraband. "Is this a gang meet-up? You can't bring outsiders in here. This is a safe neighborhood." Marcus, a man who had spent years in combat zones, didn't even blink. He just said calmly, "Ma'am, we're here to help Jason." Nothing more. Karen sneered. "We'll see about that." Within hours, she'd fired off emails to the board, called every neighbor she could, and apparently told the police she suspected paramilitary training happening at my home. The police arrive. Now, with the cops on my porch, I knew exactly whose fingerprints were all over this. "Where is he?" the officer repeated. "In the back," I said carefully. "But before you jump to conclusions, you should see for yourselves." We walked around to the backyard. And what they saw stopped them in their tracks. Jason was dripping with sweat, pushing himself through push-ups, while Eli and Ty, 2 other SEALs, stood over him, barking encouragement. "Don't quit on yourself, Jason. Push through the pain," Eli shouted. Jason's arms trembled, his face was red, but he kept going. Every ounce of his being poured into those push-ups. The officers looked at each other, unsure. This is what the HOA was worried about. Karen escalates. That's when Karen appeared, storming through the gate without permission, her phone recording. "I told you," she shrieked. "Look at this. Armed men training a teenager like some kind of soldier. This is illegal. Arrest them." Ty stepped forward, calm but commanding. "Ma'am, we're Navy SEALs. We've served this country. We're teaching him discipline, not violence." Karen scoffed. "I don't care if you're astronauts. You don't belong here." Her voice cracked with rage, but it was clear she was rattled. The cops, however, didn't move to cuff anyone. They just watched. Jason finally collapsed onto the grass, gasping for air. He looked up at the officers, his voice trembling. I just want to be strong like my uncle. He died serving. I don't want to let him down." The yard went quiet. Even the cops softened. The turning point. One officer knelt beside Jason. "Kid, you're not doing anything wrong. You're honoring him." But Karen wouldn't back down. "This is harassment. You're supposed to protect this neighborhood from people like them." Marcus turned toward her, his eyes hard. "Ma'am, people like us protect this country so you can stand there and yell." You should be ashamed. Karen's face turned red. For the first time, she had no words. She spun on her heel and stormed out, muttering threats about lawsuits. The cops stood. One of them extended a hand to Marcus. Thank you for your service. And for teaching this young man. Jason sat up straighter, chest heaving, but there was pride in his eyes. The fallout. Karen wasn't done. She tried to rally the HOA, filing complaints and demanding fines. But word spread quickly. Neighbors who'd been skeptical of Jason suddenly saw him differently. They saw the men training him, the values being taught, and the truth Karen had tried to twist. A week later, at the HOA meeting, dozens of residents showed up, not to support Karen, but to demand she step down from the board. Her reign of terror crumbled in front of her own eyes. As for Jason, he carried himself differently after that. He walked taller, spoke clearer, and never doubted himself the way he had before. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he asked Marcus, "Do you think I'll ever be like my uncle?" Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Jason, being like your uncle isn't about wearing a uniform. It's about your heart. And you already have it." The message. The HOA thought they could crush us with rules, fear, and intimidation. They thought a mother's gossip and a phone call to the cops would tear us down. But they underestimated the resilience of a teenager finding his path. They underestimated the quiet power of brotherhood. And they forgot one thing: courage doesn't need permission. Karen's voice eventually faded into whispers. Jason's, however, grew stronger every day. And in the end, what started as harassment turned into something much bigger. A boy becoming a man, with Navy SEALs at his side and his father watching proudly.